Welcome, Untamed Hearts. You've returned to Tales by Jenny Moon, a place where the wild waits, where every heartbeat can be hunted, and every touch carries danger. Tonight's story will stir your senses, tempt you with desire, and bind you to alphas, fated mates, and the hunger that never lets go. But remember, every choice has its cost. Mark your presence with the pack. Like, comment, subscribe, share. So the night knows you're here, and the stories know where to find you. Stay close, Untamed Heart. The night has already chosen you.
The bells of Blackthornne village rang out in celebration, chiming against the clear night sky as though the stars themselves were rejoicing. Music drifted through the air, sweet and wild, the rhythm of fiddles and drums blending with laughter. Bonfires burned high in the town square, flames casting golden light over the festival grounds. People had come from every corner of the kingdom to dance, feast, and offer tribute to the moon goddess on this sacred night. Among the revelers moved a girl who turned every head she passed. Selena Blackthornne glided between the stalls with a grace that seemed unearthly, her dark hair flowing like a river of silk, her pale skin kissed by moonlight. She wore no jewels, no finery beyond a simple lavender gown, yet she outshone every maiden dressed in pearls and velvet. Her beauty was not just a matter of form. It was a force, a quiet magnetism that seemed to silence the world around her. "Who is she?" a stranger whispered as Selena passed. "The Blackthornne daughter," came the answer. "Lady Morgath's stepchild. They say her beauty rivals the dawn itself." Selena heard the whispers, though she pretended not to. Compliments, envy, longing stares, they had followed her all her life. But tonight, she felt no joy in them. For lurking on the edge of the crowd, hidden beneath jeweled veils and layers of silk, her stepmother was watching. Lady Morgath's sharp eyes glittered with something darker than jealousy, a hunger sharpened by years of bitterness. Morgath had always resented the girl, resented how the memory of her husband lived on through Selena's face, how his bloodline burned brighter in the stepdaughter than in her own child, Isolda. And tonight, as the festival flames painted Selena in divine light, Morgath's envy grew unbearable. Selena, unaware of the storm brewing, paused by a merchant's stall where glass lanterns glowed in every color. A little boy tugged at her sleeve, holding out a wilted flower as an offering. Selena knelt, smiled, and took it as though it were the finest treasure. "Thank you, little one," she said, her voice as soft as velvet. The boy's mother gasped at the kindness, bowing low. "Blessings on you, Lady Selena." The crowd swelled around her, praising her beauty, praising her gentleness. Laughter followed her like a crown, and Morgath from the shadows clenched her fists until her rings bit blood into her skin. "Enough," she hissed beneath her breath. "Enough of her light." When the festival reached its peak, when dancers spun in circles and the drums thundered like a heartbeat, Morgath moved. Cloaked in darkness, she slipped behind the stage where offerings to the moon goddess had been laid. Silver goblets, bread, salt, herbs, and a bowl of sacred wine shimmered in the firelight. Morgath reached into her gown, drawing forth a vial of black liquid, stolen from witches who had long been banished from the kingdom. She whispered words not meant for mortal tongues, her voice twisting like smoke as she poured the blackness into the sacred bowl. The wine writhed as though alive, turning to a shade deeper than midnight. Then, stepping into the torchlight, Morgath raised her hands high and called out, her tone dripping with false reverence. "Moon goddess, accept our devotion tonight, and witness the one who dares to shine too brightly." The crowd turned as Morgath's gaze speared Selena. Selena froze. For a moment she felt her heart drop into her stomach. She had long feared her stepmother's hatred, but never before had Morgath spoken so openly. The music faltered. The drums fell silent. Morgath's voice rose, carried by venom and sorcery. "May her beauty be stripped away, hidden beneath a face of ruin, until the day the blood moon rises. Let her ugliness be her cage, her shame, her chains." A wind howled through the square, though no storm had been forecast. The flames of the bonfires leapt high, then bent inward as though drawn toward Selena. Shadows coiled around her like snakes. She screamed as her reflection shattered, not in a mirror but in her very soul. Her skin seemed to twist, her features collapsing into grotesque lines unseen by the eye but felt in the spirit. She clutched her face, trembling as laughter, cruel, cold, Morgath's laughter, rang out over the stunned silence of the villagers. "Look at her," Morgath cried. "No goddesses chosen, no beauty to be praised, only a cursed child unworthy of her name." Selena staggered back, tears burning her eyes. "What have you done to me?" Morgath smiled, her lips thin and cruel. "I have shown the world your true reflection." The villagers murmured, fear rippling through the crowd. Some averted their gaze, others whispered that they dared not cross a lady who wielded such power. Only a few looked at Selena with pity. Desperate, Selena turned to her stepsister Isolda, who stood at Morgath's side in a gown of crimson silk. For a fleeting moment Selena hoped for mercy. But Isolda only smirked, her lips curving into triumph. Selena ran. Through the crowds, through the narrow streets, away from the firelight. She ran until her lungs burned and her gown tore against the stones. When she reached the Blackthornne estate, she locked herself in her chamber and collapsed before the mirror. Her breath caught. The curse was cruel. In the glass, her once perfect face had become a thing of horror, eyes sunken, skin marred by shadows that clung no matter how she rubbed them away. She touched her cheek with shaking fingers, feeling the ridges of skin that weren't truly there. For the ugliness lived not in flesh but in the magic that bound her. She sobbed until dawn, hiding her face in her hands. From that day forward, Selena never walked the world unveiled. A long veil of black lace covered her features, a prison woven in cloth. Morgath forced her into the shadows, treating her as little more than a servant, while Isolda thrived as the jewel of the household. Yet even as Selena bent beneath the weight of the curse, a spark burned within her. The moon goddess had not abandoned her entirely. For every time the blood moon rose, once in a rare cycle, Selena glimpsed her true reflection again, radiant, untouchable, and defiant. And deep in her heart she vowed, one day this curse will break. One day Morgath will answer for what she has done. But for now, Selena lived veiled, hidden, her beauty buried beneath a mask of shadows, unseen by all, but destined to be noticed by the one man who could shatter her chains, the Alpha King. The years slipped by like shadows across the moon, each one pressing heavier upon Selena's shoulders. What had begun as the cruel humiliation of a single night had become a prison that defined her existence. The Blackthornne estate, once her father's proud home, had turned into a gilded cage. Selena lived there not as a daughter of noble blood, but as little more than a servant. The halls that had once echoed with her laughter now rang with Isolda's shrill commands. The servants, once her playmates, avoided her eyes as though the veil she wore was cursed cloth. To them, she was no longer Lady Selena, but the Veiled One, a girl who lingered in the shadows with a face too dreadful to behold. Her stepmother ensured it. Lady Morgath rarely called her by name anymore. She referred to her as the girl, or worse, the cursed thing. "Take these trays to the kitchens, girl. Mind the ashes in the hearth, girl." Selena obeyed, veiled, head bowed, even as her heart ached. She had once been her father's pride, the heir to his lands and legacy. Now she scrubbed floors and polished silver while her stepsister Isolda lounged in silken gowns and basked in the attention of noble suitors. But Selena bore it in silence. She had learned that silence was her only armor. Every word of protest fed Morgath's cruelty. Every flash of defiance was punished with isolation or worse. So she kept her pain hidden behind the lace of her veil and spoke little. Still, silence could not smother her spirit completely. On nights when the blood moon rose, rare and red as spilled wine, Selena would sneak to her chamber mirror, and there, for a few fleeting hours, her curse would lift, She would see herself again, the luminous face, the radiant eyes, the beauty that once made entire crowds gasp. Those nights were bittersweet, a reminder of what had been stolen, and of what might one day be restored. But hope was a fragile thing. The kingdom had entered a restless age. Whispers of the Alpha King's power carried through every marketplace and hall. His reign was spoken of with equal parts fear and awe. Kale Dragor, they called him, the ruthless wolf who had united fractured clans and crushed his rivals without mercy. Some said he was cursed himself, bound by a fate no other king would dare endure. Others claimed he was searching for the one woman who could stand at his side and tame his ferocity. It was this rumor that Lady Morgath seized upon with greedy hands. Selena first overheard it on a quiet afternoon when she crept into the east wing of the estate to deliver fresh linens. She moved silently, her veil brushing against her cheeks, her hands balancing the folded fabrics. The east wing was forbidden to her, reserved for Morgath's private councils and Isolda's chambers, but necessity had drawn her there. As she neared the heavy oak door of Morgath's solar, voices drifted out. Selena froze, her heart thudding. "He will choose his consort soon," Morgath was saying, her tone sharp as glass. "And it must be you, Isolda. Think of what it would mean. To be queen beside the Alpha King, to hold influence over every clan, every territory. With him at your side, we would command the kingdom itself." Isolda's laughter followed, light and self-satisfied. "And why would he not choose me? I am the fairest maiden left unwed, am I not? My gowns are unrivaled, my beauty uncontested. He will take one look at me and forget any other woman." Selena's hands tightened around the linens, her knuckles whitening. She could almost feel Morgath's smirk through the door. "Exactly so, my jewel. But we must be clever. The Alpha King is not easily swayed by mere beauty. He values loyalty, strength, submission to his will. You must play the role carefully, the devoted maiden willing to be molded into his queen. Leave the rest to me. Once you are chosen, I will whisper in your ear, and through you, I will hold Dragor's throne." Selena's breath caught. The boldness of it chilled her. Morgath meant not only to marry Isolda into power, but to wield Kale himself as a puppet. "But what of her?" Isolda asked then, her voice sharp with disdain. For a moment Selena thought they spoke of her. Her chest tightened. Morgath's reply came, dripping with venom. "The cursed one? She is nothing. She has no beauty left to steal, no claim to threaten us. Her existence shames her more each day. As long as she hides behind that veil, she will never step into the light again." Isolda giggled cruelly. "Sometimes I forget she still lives in this house, like a shadow clinging to the walls. Perhaps we should lock her in the cellar for good. Patience, my darling. Shadows are harmless when no one looks at them." Selena turned away, forcing herself not to stumble. Her legs felt weak beneath her, yet she carried the linens back down the hall with steady steps. Her heart, however, trembled with fury. Nothing. That was what they called her. A shadow. A curse. And yet, as she slipped into her chamber and shut the door behind her, Selena pressed her hand to her chest and whispered fiercely to herself, "I am not nothing. I am not shadow. One day, the truth will come to light." She sank onto her narrow bed, her veil trailing across the sheets. The words she had overheard would not leave her. The Alpha King was coming. He would choose a consort, and Morgath meant to seize that moment, to place Isolda on the throne and claim power over the kingdom. Selena's pulse quickened. If Kale Dragor was as ruthless as they said, Morgath's scheme would draw danger upon them all. But deeper still, a secret thought whispered through her mind, one she scarcely dared name. What if he saw me instead? What if the Alpha King could see beyond the curse? She shook the thought away, ashamed of her foolishness. No king would ever look twice at a veiled servant girl, no matter what truth lay hidden beneath. And yet fate was already moving. Far beyond the walls of Blackthornne estate, the Alpha King had set his eyes upon the horizon. His journey toward the Blackthornne household had already begun. Selena did not know it, but the night she dreaded most, the night she had prayed would never come, was drawing nearer with each beat of her heart. The days that followed carried an undercurrent of dread through the Blackthornne estate. Servants scrubbed floors until the marble gleamed. Tapestries were hung from every wall, and flowers were plucked from the gardens to adorn the long banquet tables. The entire household was in a frenzy, for the Alpha King himself was coming. Selena watched it all from the shadows. She moved through the corridors unseen, her veil whispering against her cheeks as she carried trays or polished silver, her hands raw from labor. She had known kings before, distant, untouchable figures whose decrees arrived as ink on parchment. But Kale Dragor was different. His name carried weight like a blade. The stories told of his cruelty, his cunning, his victories on blood-soaked fields. Some said he had no heart, that he ruled with a hand of iron and a soul of stone. But others whispered of something stranger, that beneath his merciless rule burned a fire, a hunger for something he had yet to find. Selena tried not to think of him at all. He belonged to a world she had no part in. And yet, every time the servants gossiped about his arrival, her heart betrayed her, beating faster as though it knew a secret her mind refused to accept. The morning of his visit dawned bright and cold. The estate's gates opened, and the sound of hooves thundered down the long drive. Selena, standing near the courtyard with a basket of linens, looked up despite herself. The Alpha King rode at the head of a host of armored men. His steed was black as night, its breath steaming in the chill air, its hooves striking sparks from the stone. The riders behind him bore banners marked with the sigil of Dragor, a silver wolf against a field of midnight blue. And then there was Kale himself. He was larger than she had imagined, his broad shoulders wrapped in a cloak of wolf fur, his armor glinting with dark steel. His hair was raven black, his jaw sharp, his eyes a piercing shade of gold that seemed to see everything. When he dismounted, the sheer weight of his presence rippled through the air. Men bowed low, women curtsied, and even the birds seemed to fall silent in the trees. Selena ducked her head, clutching the basket tighter. She willed herself to be invisible, but Kale's gaze was sharp as a blade, and for the briefest of moments it fell on her. Her breath caught. He had only glanced her way, perhaps drawn by the oddity of a veiled servant lingering in the courtyard. But in that heartbeat, she felt as though he had looked straight through the lace, straight into her soul. She lowered her head further, fleeing into the shadows of the corridor before his eyes could linger. Inside, Lady Morgath waited with all the pomp of a queen who had long been denied her throne. She swept forward, her gown a cascade of black silk, Isolda gliding at her side in a gown of crimson velvet trimmed with pearls. "Your Majesty," Morgath purred, dipping into a deep curtsy. "It is the highest honor to welcome you into our home." Kale studied her without expression. His golden eyes swept the hall, then settled briefly on Isolda, who lowered her lashes and smiled with practiced sweetness. "My lady," he said, his voice deep, commanding, and laced with the weight of authority. "I come not for feasts or pleasantries. I seek strength, loyalty, alliances worth forging. Your household will prove itself, or it will not." Morgath's smile did not falter, though tension flickered across her brow. "Of course, Your Majesty. My daughter Isolda embodies the finest virtues of our house. She is beauty, grace, and devotion itself." Isolda stepped forward, bowing her head. "It is a gift beyond measure to stand in your presence, Alpha King." Kale regarded her coolly. He was not a man easily swayed by appearances, and though Isolda was fair, her beauty had the hollow polish of vanity. She radiated confidence, but to Kale's eyes, it was the confidence of someone who had never bled, never fought, never endured. His gaze drifted briefly again, past Morgath, past Isolda, toward the darker corners of the hall. And there, half hidden near the servants, he saw her, the veiled girl. She lingered behind the pillars, her head bowed, carrying a tray of goblets. She was trying, he realized, to go unseen. And yet there was something about her presence that tugged at him. Something different. "Who is she?" Kale asked suddenly, his voice cutting through the hall like a whip. Morgath stiffened. For a heartbeat, her carefully crafted composure faltered. Then she forced a laugh, sharp and dismissive. "A servant, nothing more. Pay her no mind, my king. The true jewel of this house stands before you." She gestured grandly to Isolda, who smiled all the brighter. But Kale's eyes lingered on the veiled figure, curiosity flickering in his golden stare. The servant girl did not move, did not speak, but he could feel the weight of her silence, the way her presence seemed both fragile and unyielding. Selena's hands trembled around the tray. She had not meant to be noticed. She had prayed to remain invisible, yet somehow his gaze had found her, as though drawn by something neither of them could name. Morgath, seeing the danger, swept forward to reclaim his attention. "Shall we dine, Majesty? A feast has been prepared in your honor." Kyle's eyes narrowed, but he inclined his head. "Very well." As the lords and ladies filed into the banquet hall, Selena slipped away, her heart pounding against her ribs. She pressed her back to the cold stone wall of the corridor, clutching her tray to her chest. He saw me, she thought, her pulse wild. Why did he see me? She had hidden in shadows for years, yet with one look, the Alpha King had pierced her veil, not with sight, but with something deeper, something that unsettled her soul. Inside the hall, Isolda preened and smiled, her laughter spilling like wine as she tried to draw Kale's gaze. Morgath whispered praises of her daughter, weaving honeyed words meant to ensnare the king. But Kale, though polite, remained distant. His mind kept returning unbidden to the veiled girl in the shadows. And though Selena did not yet know it, that single glance had shifted the course of her fate. The Blackthornne estate was quieter than usual that evening, as though the heavy stone walls themselves held their breath. Servants moved with exaggerated care, fearful of disturbing the air around their exalted guest. The Alpha King's presence clung to every shadow, weighty and sharp, like the cold steel of a drawn blade. Selena lingered in the dim corridor, her hands trembling as she clutched the basket of linens against her chest. She had no reason to be near the guest wing, no reason but her own restless heart. Ever since Kale had stepped across the threshold, a strange energy had swirled through her veins. She had told herself it was fear, yet something deeper stirred, something raw and untamed that left her sleepless. Her veil covered her face as always, but beneath it, her cursed skin burned with the memory of the Alpha King's gaze. He had seen her, truly seen her, when no one else dared to look. She tried to shake the thought, but it clung like ivy to her mind. Selena rounded a corner, intent on retreating before anyone noticed her wandering, when a shadow detached itself from the wall. She froze. Kale stood there, half cloaked in darkness, his broad frame blocking her path. The silver embroidery of his tunic shimmered faintly in the torchlight, but it was his eyes, those piercing, amber eyes, that stole her breath. They were fixed not on the basket in her hands, nor the floor she should have been scrubbing, but directly on her veiled face. "You," he said, his voice low and commanding, resonating through the narrow corridor like the growl of some great beast. Selena nearly dropped the basket. She lowered her head quickly, bowing as best she could, praying he would move on. "Forgive me, Your Majesty. I should not be here. I will leave." "Stay," Kale interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. Her lungs seized, her legs rooted to the floor. Slowly, reluctantly, she obeyed, though every nerve screamed for escape. He stepped closer, studying her as though she were some puzzle carved in flesh and shadow. "You skulk about like a thief, yet you do not move as one. Who are you?" I am no one, my lord," Selena whispered, her voice muffled beneath the veil. "A servant. Nothing more." Kale tilted his head. A servant who hides her face? Strange custom. His hand twitched slightly at his side as if fighting the urge to lift the fabric and uncover what lay beneath. Why do you cover yourself? Her heart thundered. If he knew, if he saw, he would recoil in disgust, as all others had. The curse twisted her beauty into something grotesque, a cruel mockery of what once had been. Only under the blood moon did her reflection return to its true form, and even then, only for a fleeting night. I was born, marked, Selena managed at last, forcing the lie past trembling lips. It is better this way. Kale's eyes narrowed. He was no fool, no courtly sycophant swayed by polite explanations. He could scent deception as easily as blood. And yet, beneath the veil of fear and shame, he sensed something else radiating from her. A defiance, fragile but unbroken, that stirred the wolf within him. You are no servant, he said finally, his tone low, almost dangerous. Your bearing betrays you. Selena flinched. Her stepmother's threats echoed in her ears. If you dare to draw attention, I will make you wish you were never born. Morgath's power reached further than the estate. Her cruelty left scars far deeper than bruises. Please, Selena whispered, lowering her head further. Do not speak of me. Forget you saw me. But Kale only stepped closer, his scent of pine and smoke filling her senses, his voice a rumble that seemed to vibrate through her bones. No, little wolf, I think I will not forget. Her breath caught. She dared not move, dared not lift her head to meet his eyes. For a moment silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken things. Then from the end of the corridor footsteps rang out, sharp, deliberate. Lady Morgath swept into view, her gown a cascade of black silk, her lips curved in that poisonous smile that never reached her eyes. The torchlight glinted off the jewels around her neck, each one a reminder of the wealth she had clawed into her grasp. Your Majesty, she purred, inclining her head. I did not realize you preferred to wander our halls unattended. You need only summon me, and I will see to your every comfort. Kale did not turn at once. His gaze lingered on Selena, who shrank under Morgath's piercing glare. Only when Morgath drew nearer did he finally step back, allowing the girl space to breathe. I was not unattended, Kale replied evenly. I encountered this servant. Selena's blood ran cold. Morgath's eyes hardened as they flicked to her veiled form. A useless thing, Morgath said smoothly, though venom dripped beneath her tone. I will see her punished for wandering where she does not belong. Kyle's jaw flexed, his expression unreadable. Punished? For walking a corridor? She is disobedient, Morgath pressed, her voice silk, wrapping around steel. I keep her only out of pity. Think nothing of her, Your Majesty. My daughter Isolda is far more fitting company. Selena bowed quickly, clutching her basket, and tried to flee past them. Morgath's hand shot out, gripping her arm like talons. Remember your place, she hissed beneath her breath, her smile never faltering for Kale's sake. Selena lowered her head. Yes, stepmother. Kale's eyes flicked between them, sharp as a wolf catching the scent of blood. Something unspoken passed through him then, a decision carved in silence. At last he spoke. Lady Morgath, I will overlook this lapse. But tomorrow, ensure this servant attends me at the palace. Both women froze. Morgath's mask cracked, if only for a heartbeat, before she forced a laugh. Surely Your Majesty jests. My daughter. I said what I said, Kale interrupted, his voice iron. His gaze swept once more over Selena, burning through veil and shadow alike. Do not fail me. And with that he turned and strode away, leaving the corridor heavy with the weight of his command. Selena could not breathe. Her stepmother's grip tightened cruelly on her arm, nails biting into her skin. Morgath's whisper was acid against her ear. You foolish girl, she spat. Do you think you've won some favor? You've doomed yourself. Selena's heart pounded so hard it hurt. She did not know what awaited her in the palace, nor why the Alpha King had chosen her of all people. But she knew one thing with chilling certainty. Her life would never be the same again. The journey to the royal palace was a blur of hooves pounding against dirt roads and the steady creak of carriage wheels. Selena sat across from Lady Morgath and Isolda, her veil drawn tightly over her face. Morgath's grip on her wrist had left faint crescents of bruises that throbbed with every bump along the path. The older woman had not spoken since the command was issued, though her silence was more dangerous than her sharp tongue. Selena felt the weight of it pressing against her chest, heavy with unspoken threats. Every so often, Isolda cast her a sidelong glare, her lips twisted into a smug smile, as though she relished the storm that would fall upon Selena once the Alpha King's attention wavered. The palace loomed on the horizon as dawn bled into the sky. Its spires pierced the morning mist, gleaming white stone kissed by the first light of day. Selena had seen it only from a distance before, its grandeur a place meant for fairy tales, not for girls like her who hid their faces in shame. Yet here she was, summoned by the most powerful man in the land. The guards escorted them through gilded gates, across courtyards alive with fluttering banners, into vast halls where light scattered across marble floors polished to a mirror's sheen. Selena kept her gaze lowered, though she could feel curious stares prickling her skin. Whispers followed her veil like a trail of smoke. Morgath, of course, flourished in the attention. She swept forward with the poise of a queen, Isolda trailing at her side like a carefully groomed pet. "Your Majesty will see us now," announced a herald, his voice carrying through the vaulted chamber. They were ushered into the throne room. The space was cavernous, the ceilings lost in shadows, yet it was not the room that stole Selena's breath. It was the man seated upon the dais. Kale sat with the posture of a predator at rest, one arm draped over the carved wolf heads of his throne. His presence filled the chamber, not just in body, but in essence like the echo of a storm waiting to break. Selena's pulse thundered. She bowed low, trembling beneath her veil. Morgath curtsied gracefully, her silken voice flowing like poisoned honey. "Your Majesty, I bring my daughter Isolda to honor your summons. She is of noble blood, untainted and loyal, a perfect choice for your—" "I did not summon Isolda," Kale cut in, his tone cold as steel. His amber gaze slid past Morgath and her daughter to the veiled figure trembling at their side. "I summoned her." The words cracked like a whip in the chamber. Morgath stiffened, her knuckles whitening as she gripped her skirts. Isolda's eyes widened in outrage. Selena's legs nearly buckled. She took a hesitant step forward, her breath loud in her ears. Kale rose from his throne, descending the steps with measured, deliberate strides. His gaze never wavered from her, piercing through fabric and fear alike. When he reached her, he stopped so close that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, the raw power coiled beneath his skin. "Lift your head," he commanded softly. Selena obeyed, though every instinct screamed to flee. She tilted her chin, though the veil still concealed her cursed face. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. Kale's eyes searched hers, as though trying to peel back every layer of secrecy she had wrapped around herself. Then, with a faint curl of his lips, he spoke words that struck her like lightning. "Be my secret mate," he said, his voice carrying not to the court, but to her alone, though she knew Morgath strained to hear, "and I will break your curse." Selena's breath caught in her throat. Her heart hammered so violently she thought the veil might flutter with the force of it. What? She stammered, her voice barely a whisper. Kale leaned closer, his words brushing against her ear like the growl of a wolf. "I see the truth beneath your veil. I know of the darkness that clings to you, but I am not afraid of curses, Selena. I am a king, and kings make bargains. You give yourself to me, wholly, secretly, and I will shatter the chains that bind you." The world spun around her. Her curse, broken? It was an impossible dream, something she had long buried beneath years of torment and shame. And yet, Here stood the Alpha King himself, offering it as though it were within his grasp. But at what cost? Selena's hands trembled at her sides. She imagined unveiling her face before him, imagined the revulsion in his eyes once he truly saw her ugliness. She imagined Morgath's wrath, the sneers of courtiers, the whispers that would brand her a curse-born bride. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "I cannot. I will not be anyone's secret." Kyle's eyes narrowed, a dangerous light flickering within them. "Do you think refusal will save you? Do you think Morgath will spare you once you return home? You are already in the wolf's den, girl. Better to align yourself with me than to be devoured by her." Selena's lips parted, but no sound came out. He was right. She knew he was right. Morgath's fury would consume her the moment they left these walls. And yet, to bind herself to Kale, to surrender what little freedom she had left, it terrified her more than her stepmother's cruelty. Morgath stepped forward suddenly, her tone bright, desperate. "Your Majesty, you cannot mean to choose her. She is nothing. A veiled wretch I keep out of pity. My daughter." "Silence," Kyle thundered, his voice echoing off the stone walls. Morgath flinched as though struck. He turned back to Selena, his voice softening, though the command within it remained. "You have until the next full moon to decide. Refuse, and I will let you walk away. But you will return to Morgath's mercy. Accept and you will belong to me, and your curse will end." His gaze burned into her, daring her to defy him, promising both danger and salvation. Selena's knees felt weak, her breath ragged beneath her veil. She lowered her head, unable to meet his eyes any longer. She did not answer. She could not. Kale straightened, his expression unreadable. With a flick of his hand, he dismissed the court. "Take her to the guest chambers. She remains under my protection until she decides." The chamber erupted into whispers, courtiers buzzing like hornets stirred from their nest. Morgath's face was a mask of fury barely restrained. Isolda trembled with humiliation, her fists clenched at her sides. Selena was led away, her heart pounding, her mind a storm of fear and longing. The Alpha King's words rang in her ears with every step. "Be my secret mate and I will break your curse." She did not know which terrified her more, the curse itself, or the man who promised to end it. The palace felt less like a sanctuary and more like a gilded cage. Selena moved through its vast corridors with her head lowered, veil in place, every step echoing against marble floors that seemed too clean, too unforgiving. She was under Kale's protection, yes, but protection in the Alpha King's court was never a guarantee of safety. Everywhere she turned, eyes followed her. Courtiers whispered behind jeweled fans, their voices slithering like snakes. They wondered aloud who the veiled girl was, why the king had commanded she remain, and what hold she could possibly have on him. Some speculated she was a spy. Others murmured that she was a witch. But the cruelest whispers suggested she was simply an ugly secret Kale was too ashamed to name. And Selena heard them all. Each word cut deeper than the last. Still, Kyle's presence lingered like a shield. He had not sought her again since the throne room, but his words clung to her mind as stubbornly as the curse clung to her flesh. "Be my secret mate, and I will break your curse." The thought was intoxicating and terrifying. Selena kept to the quieter wings of the palace when she could, away from the prying eyes of courtiers and the searing gaze of Morgath. But she could not avoid Isolda forever. Her stepsister found her one afternoon in the gardens, where Selena had sought a rare moment of stillness. The roses were in bloom, crimson and ivory, their fragrance thick in the air. Selena knelt by a fountain, running her fingers through the cool water, her veil fluttering with the breeze. For a fleeting second, she almost felt at peace. "You do not belong here." The voice was sharp, laced with venom. Selena stiffened. Slowly she rose and turned. Isolda stood at the edge of the path, her gown a cascade of pale green silk, her golden hair gleaming in the sunlight. She looked every inch the daughter Morgath wanted her to be. Perfect, untarnished, untouchable. Selena lowered her gaze. I did not choose to come here. No, Isolda sneered, stepping closer. But somehow you've managed to catch the king's attention. How? Tell me. What spell did you cast beneath that filthy veil? Selena flinched at the words, though she kept her voice soft. He asked me nothing more than to stay. That is all. That is not all. Isolda snapped. Her voice trembled with barely contained rage. Do you know how many nights I dreamed of standing before him? How many years I have prepared to be noticed, to be chosen? And yet he looks past me. For you. Selena lifted her chin slightly, though fear knotted in her belly. It was not my doing. Liar, Isolda hissed. Her hand twitched as though she longed to strike Selena, but the watchful eyes of guards at the garden gate stayed her hand. Instead, she leaned close, her whisper ablade. Enjoy your fleeting moment, sister, because soon you will wish he had never seen you. With that, she swept away, her skirts whispering against the gravel path, leaving Selena cold and trembling. That night, Morgath's fury boiled hotter than ever. In the privacy of her chamber, she smashed a crystal goblet against the wall, the shards scattering across the floor. That girl, she spat, pacing like a caged beast. That cursed brat dares to stand where my daughter should shine. Does the king not see how unworthy she is? Isolda stood by the fire, her arms crossed tightly. He sees something in her. I do not know what, but he commanded she remain, and he listens to no one. Then we shall not fight him openly, Morgath growled. Her eyes glittered darkly. We will go where even the king's will cannot shield her. From a hidden compartment beneath her desk, Morgath drew forth a black crystal, its surface swirling with faint shadows. The air in the chamber grew colder as she whispered words in an ancient tongue, summoning powers forbidden by most. A ripple stirred across the mirror mounted on the wall. The glass darkened, and slowly, shapes emerged within it. Cloaked figures, their faces obscured by masks carved from bone. Their voices echoed like whispers from a crypt. The Shadow Court answers, one intoned. Morgath bowed her head slightly, her lips curving in satisfaction. I require aid. There is a girl in the palace veiled and cursed. Remove her from my path, and I will repay you in blood or gold. The cloaked figures tilted their heads, as though considering. We have heard whispers of the cursed one, another said. Her magic burns faintly, yet it stirs against us. She is not as harmless as she seems. Morgath's smile sharpened. Then strike her down before she becomes more. The Shadow Court murmured among themselves, their voices like the rustling of dead leaves. At last, they agreed. The curse she bears is fragile now. We can worsen it. We can weave the shadows tighter until it consumes her flesh and soul. When the blood moon rises, she will wither and die. Morgath's eyes gleamed. Do it. The mirror darkened once more, returning to its mundane reflection. The black crystal pulsed faintly in her hand, then fell still. Isolda shivered, though she tried to hide it. Mother, if the curse destroys her, what of the king? He will suspect nothing. Morgath interrupted sharply. And if he does, let him rage. He cannot undo death. Selena awoke that night with a scream caught in her throat. Her skin burned as though fire crawled beneath it. She staggered from her bed, clutching the edge of the wash basin, trembling as she stared at her reflection in the faint moonlight. Her veil had slipped. Beneath it, the curse had deepened. The lines of shadow etched across her cheeks were darker now, more jagged, pulsing faintly as though alive. Her once bright eyes seemed clouded, ringed by veins of black. She touched her face and the mark throbbed like an open wound. No, 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 she whispered, tears blurring her vision. The curse was worsening. She could feel it, clawing at her veins, seeping deeper into her flesh. The whispers of dark magic slithered at the edge of her hearing, voices she could not understand but which chilled her to the bone. She sank to her knees, clutching her chest, gasping as though drowning. Fear wrapped around her like chains. And yet, through the panic, Kale's words echoed in her mind once more. "Be my secret mate, and I will break your curse." For the first time, the offer no longer felt like temptation. It felt like the only hope she had left. Morning light streamed through the palace windows, spilling across Selena's chamber like molten gold. She sat by the edge of her bed, veil draped over her face, hands pressed tightly together. Sleep had eluded her after the curse's violent surge. Every hour brought new dread. The shadows under her skin grew darker, the marks more jagged. If the blood moon hastened its arrival, she feared she might not survive it. And then, the summons came. 2 guards stood at her door, their expressions neutral but their tone firm. "The king commands your presence. Dress. You will ride with him." Selena's heart nearly stopped. Ride? With him? Her first instinct was panic. Morgath's whispers lingered in her ears. "If you dare draw attention, you will regret it." She wanted nothing more than to refuse, but Kale's command was law. Even Morgath did not openly defy it. Moments later, she was led to the courtyard, where Kale waited astride a massive black stallion. His posture was easy, but his presence radiated danger, the kind of raw power that bent the air around him. His golden eyes flicked toward her as she approached, and something unreadable flickered in their depths. "You will ride with me today," he said simply, his tone leaving no room for argument. "The hunt calls." Selena froze. "A hunt?" Kale's lips quirked faintly. "What, little wolf? Do you think yourself too fragile to watch the blood run?" She lowered her gaze. "I am no hunter, your majesty." "No," he said, leaning forward slightly, "but you are mine to command." Heat crawled up her throat, though she bowed her head in submission. She was lifted onto a smaller mare by one of the guards, her veil adjusted so the morning sun would not reveal too much. And then, with a sharp whistle, Kale led the riders out through the palace gates. The hunt was unlike anything Selena had ever witnessed. Wolves of Kale's personal guard ran alongside the horses, their fur glinting like silver and ash in the light. Horns sounded through the forest, hounds barked, and the riders' laughter echoed as they pursued the wild boar said to be tearing through the nearby villages. Selena clung to the reins, her heart pounding at every jolt of the horse beneath her. She had grown up hidden, veiled, bound by Morgath's rules. To ride through the open woods, wind tugging at her cloak, was both terrifying and exhilarating. Kale glanced back often, his eyes lingering on her, watching how she moved, how she tried to mask her fear but sat with an instinctive balance she didn't realize she possessed. Something in her posture whispered of strength, long suppressed. They reached a clearing where tracks split across the earth. Kale raised a hand, signaling silence. The air shifted, heavy with tension. And then it came. A snarl tore through the trees, deeper, rougher than any boar. From the shadows lunged a wolf, not one of Kale's but a rogue. Its fur was matted, its eyes wild with bloodlust, foam dripping from its jaws. The stench of rot clung to its pelt. The guards reacted instantly, drawing weapons, but the rogue was fast, darting past spears and teeth bared, straight for Kale. Selena's breath caught. Time seemed to slow. She saw the wolf's muscles coil, saw Kale's hand reaching for his blade, but she felt something deeper, a tug inside her chest, ancient and wild. "No!" The word ripped from her throat as her hand shot forward. A surge of energy burst from her palms, invisible yet powerful, striking the rogue mid-leap. The beast was hurled backward, yelping as it crashed into a tree. Shadows flickered across Selena's hands, curling like smoke before vanishing into her skin. Silence fell. The guards froze, eyes wide. Kale turned sharply, his golden gaze burning into her. The rogue writhed, stunned but not dead, before the wolves of Kale's guard finished it with swift precision. Blood stained the earth, steaming in the cool air. Selena trembled, lowering her hands quickly, clutching the reins so tightly her knuckles ached. She could not breathe. What have I done? Kyle dismounted, striding toward her with the predatory grace of a wolf. He stopped at her side, his gaze locked on her trembling hands. That, he said softly, dangerously, was no accident. Selena shook her head desperately beneath her veil. I don't know what that was. Please. I didn't mean... But Kale caught her wrist, lifting her hand into the light. I have hunted with seasoned warriors who cannot wield such force. You, veiled girl, cursed girl, you just struck down a rogue wolf without touching it. His eyes narrowed, his voice dropping lower. Tell me, what are you? Her heart pounded like a drum. She tried to pull back, but his grip was firm, unyielding. Tears burned her eyes beneath the veil. I don't know, she whispered. I swear it. The curse. It takes and it gives. I cannot control it. Kale studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then slowly, he released her hand. You are not what you seem, he said finally, his tone like the weight of prophecy. And I will not rest until I uncover the truth. The hunt resumed, though the riders were quieter now, casting wary glances at Selena as though she carried plague or fire. She kept her gaze lowered, her body trembling with the aftershock of the magic. The curse had never done that before, never protected, only tormented. Why now? That night, as she sat alone in her chamber, the memory replayed over and over. The way the shadows had curled from her skin, the raw power rushing through her veins, and Kale's voice, deep and unyielding. You are not what you seem. She pressed her hands to her face, sobbing softly. Outside her door, Kyle lingered in the shadows, silent, watching through the sliver of light beneath the threshold. His wolf stirred within him, restless, drawn to her. He did not yet understand what she was, but he knew this much. The cursed girl was far more dangerous than anyone realized, and she was his to claim. The palace torches blazed brighter than usual that night, as if the flames themselves were restless under the swelling moon. The corridors seemed to hum with expectation, the servants whispering of omens and shadows, for tonight was rare, the rising of the blood moon, an event said to strip away lies and reveal what was hidden. Selena knew the truth of those whispers, for the curse Lady Morgath had set upon her years ago was bound to this very cycle. Whenever the blood moon rose, her veil of ugliness dissolved, and the face that once drew envy from kingdoms would resurface. But even in that freedom there was peril. To be seen, truly seen, was to place herself directly in Morgath's line of fire. She tried to avoid the king's gaze as they returned from the hunt. The memory of her reckless magic burned in her chest like a brand. She had revealed too much when she shielded him from the rogue wolf. Kyle had noticed. She could feel it in the way his golden eyes lingered, watching her with a hunter's patience. Walk beside me, he commanded softly, his voice smooth yet edged with authority. Selena lowered her head, clutching the veil tighter around her face. My lord, I am unworthy of such an honor. Kyle stopped abruptly. His presence loomed, the heat of his body seeping through the cool night air. Unworthy? His tone held disbelief, but also curiosity. Or unwilling. The words rattled through her like a storm. She dared not answer, for her tongue might betray her secret. She bowed instead and walked ahead, pretending the thudding of her heart was not loud enough to echo through the marble halls. Later that night, when most of the palace had retreated to their chambers, Selena lingered alone in the garden courtyard. She craved air. The oppressive weight of Morgath's warning and Kale's piercing stares made the palace suffocating. The moon was climbing higher, red and swollen, painting the world in shades of crimson. She could feel it beginning, the curse unraveling. Her hands trembled as she removed her veil. She had not seen her true reflection in months, save for fleeting moments under the blood moon. She knelt beside the fountain, watching as the water's rippling surface transformed. The warped, ugly face Morgath's curse had crafted melted away, and in its place appeared the girl she once was, radiant, luminous, with eyes like twilight stars and hair that shimmered under the moonlight. She wanted to weep, from joy, from sorrow, from the cruel reality that this beauty was fleeting. When dawn came, the mask of ugliness would return. "You hide yourself from the world, but not from me," Selena gasped, spinning around. Kale stood at the edge of the courtyard, half cloaked in shadow. His golden eyes glowed brighter than the torches, reflecting the blood moon above. He had seen her, truly seen her. Her knees weakened. "No," she whispered, clutching the veil desperately, though it was too late. "You should not be here." Kale stepped closer, his voice low, reverent. "Selena." Her name rolled off his tongue like a vow. "This is who you are." She shook her head violently. "No, it's not. This is a lie, a cruel trick the moon plays once a month." She turned away, heart racing. "If Morgath knows you've seen me like this, she will destroy us both." Kyle closed the distance in a few strides. His hand caught her wrist, firm but not cruel, halting her escape. "Do you think I fear your stepmother?" His voice sharpened, the steel of an alpha breaking through. "I've faced armies, torn down kings, conquered lands soaked in blood. And yet," his grip softened, thumb brushing against her trembling hand, "nothing unsettles me as much as seeing you now." Selena's breath hitched, his words carved into her like fire, igniting something she had long buried. Yet the fear lingered. She pulled her wrist free, stepping back until the fountain's marble edge pressed against her. "You don't understand," she whispered. "This beauty isn't mine to keep. At dawn it vanishes. What you see is fleeting, an illusion. Tomorrow I will be nothing but Morgath's cursed shadow again." Kale's jaw tightened, his gaze unyielding. "Then I will shatter the dawn if it dares take this from me." The conviction in his tone stole the breath from her lungs. He reached up, as though to lift her chin, but hesitated, his hand hovering in the air between them. For the first time in years, Selena wanted to be touched, to be seen not as a monster, but as a woman. Yet fear chained her. "Swear to me you will not tell anyone," she pleaded, tears glistening in her eyes. "If Morgath learns you know, I won't survive it." Kale leaned closer, his breath brushing against her cheek. "Your secret is mine," he murmured. "But remember this, Selena. Curses can be broken, and when they are, no veil will ever hide you from me again." Her heart thundered in her chest. The blood moon cast them in its crimson glow, and for a suspended moment, time itself seemed to halt. Yet just as quickly, the spell was broken. A servant's hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor, and Selena recoiled, tugging the veil over her face. Kale stepped back into shadow, his expression carefully masked. The servant bowed, oblivious to the tension. "My lord, Lady Morgath requests your presence." Kale gave Selena one last lingering glance before he turned, his cloak sweeping behind him like a storm. Selena collapsed onto the fountain's edge once he was gone, clutching the veil to her face. Her beauty faded, even as she sat there, the blood moon's glow waning. She stared at her reflection as Morgath's curse reclaimed her, the familiar twisted features returning. And yet, for the first time, the ugliness felt powerless, because the Alpha King had seen through it. The council chamber had emptied of courtiers, their chatter still echoing faintly along the vaulted ceilings. Only Kale remained, his broad shoulders tense as he leaned against the carved oak table. The memory of Selena beneath the blood moon haunted him, the way her beauty had broken through that cursed veil, the vulnerability in her trembling voice, the defiance burning in her eyes despite her fear. She had tried to run from him, to retreat into shadows, but Kyle could not forget. He was not a man who easily desired, yet she had ignited something within him. Hunger, possessiveness, an ache that no war or crown could soothe. And so, when dawn broke, he sent for her. Selena was led into the private hall by 2 guards. She walked stiffly, her veil firmly in place, her steps slow. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, but disobedience to an alpha king was a dangerous folly. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she entered the chamber, finding Kale waiting. He dismissed the guards with a flick of his hand. The heavy doors closed, sealing them into silence. "Remove the veil," he ordered. Selena's fingers curled around the cloth, refusing. "No. You saw what you wanted under the blood moon. That will have to be enough." Kale's gaze darkened, but there was no cruelty in it, only an unsettling intensity. "It is not enough. You expect me to protect shadows when I've seen the fire beneath them?" Her lips trembled. "You don't understand what you ask. Every time the moon fades, the curse tightens. This face," she touched the veil lightly, "is who I am now, not the girl you saw." Kyle moved closer, each step deliberate like a predator stalking prey, yet his voice softened. "I don't seek your beauty, Selena. I seek your loyalty. Pledge yourself to me, and I will guard you from Morgath. No harm will touch you while I live." Loyalty. The word hung between them, heavy as chains. She wanted to laugh, to cry, to scream. Did he not see? To bind herself to him was to place her very life into the hands of a man she barely knew, a man surrounded by power, politics, and danger. And yet, her heart betrayed her. She wanted to believe him. "I have lived long enough under the cruelty of promises," she whispered bitterly. "Why should yours be different?" Kale's hand shot out, catching her chin beneath the veil, tilting her face upward. "Because I do not make promises. I make vows, and I do not break them." The air between them crackled, thick with something neither dared name. She could feel the pull, primal, undeniable, as if fate itself had tethered them together. Her lips parted, her body swayed almost against her will, but at the last moment she wrenched herself away. "No," she rasped. "If I surrender to you, I lose what little freedom I have left. You want my loyalty, but how long before you want my submission, my soul?" Kyle's jaw clenched. For a moment he looked as though he might argue, force the issue. But then his expression shifted, softer, sharper all at once. He stepped back, releasing her. "You resist because you fear betrayal," he said, his voice quieter. "Good. A wolf with fear is cautious. But do not mistake my desire for chains, Selena. When the time comes, you will choose. And when you do, it will be because you cannot deny me." Heat coiled in her stomach, shameful and intoxicating. She hated that part of her, longed for him to be right. Later that evening, Kale walked the ramparts with Damon at his side. The beta's silver eyes scanned the shadows beyond the palace walls. Damon had been his brother in arms since before Kale wore the crown, a man as ruthless as he was loyal. "You grow reckless," Damon said at last, his voice low. "This girl, Selena, she is dangerous." Kale's lip curled. "Dangerous? She is cursed, broken, hidden away like some shameful secret." Damon stopped him with a hand on his arm. "You mistake me. I do not mean she is dangerous to you, but to herself, and thus to us all. Morgath has eyes everywhere. She already suspects you have seen something she has kept hidden. The shadow court stirs. I can feel it in the air." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Speak plainly." Damon's tone hardened. "Morgath plots against you. She has whispered to the shadow court that you are vulnerable, that your obsession with this veiled girl is a weakness to exploit. If you do not tread carefully, Selena will be used as the blade to cut your throat." The words were meant as warning, yet they ignited something possessive and furious in Kale's chest. His hand curled around the hilt of his sword. "Then let her try. Morgath will learn what it means to challenge an alpha king." Damon studied him carefully, then sighed. You cannot fight shadows with steel, Kale, remember that. Guard your heart, or it will be your undoing. Kale turned his gaze back toward the horizon, where the forest stretched endlessly. He said nothing, but deep within, he knew Damon was right. Selena was not merely a distraction. She was a fire, one that could warm him or burn him alive. Meanwhile, Selena sat alone in her chamber, her veil discarded on the bed beside her. Her hands shook as she pressed them to her chest, trying to steady the storm within. Kale's words echoed through her mind. When the time comes, you will choose. She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the curse, the shadow of Morgath's hatred, and the dangerous allure of the Alpha King's vow. And for the first time in years, she wondered if chains forged of desire could be more binding than those of magic. The night in Blackthornne estate was thick with mist, as though the very earth wished to swallow the schemes whispered within its walls. In the highest chamber, where velvet curtains shut out the moon, Lady Morgath knelt before a pool of black water shimmering unnaturally in its silver basin. Her lips moved in hushed incantations. The liquid surface rippled and split, and from its depths rose the shifting silhouettes of the shadow court, cloaked figures whose faces were nothing but darkness, their voices echoing as though from far-off caverns. "You call us again, Morgath," one of the shadows said, its tone mocking. "Have you not squandered enough of our gifts?" Morgath bowed her head, but her smile was sharp. "I do not come empty-handed. I bring an offering, a bride, pure of blood and pleasing of face. My daughter, Isolda." At the mention of her name, Isolda stiffened where she stood at the edge of the chamber. She had been told she was here to strengthen her family's bond with power, to secure her destiny beside Kale. But now her mother spoke of giving her away, not to a king but to these creatures. One of the cloaked figures leaned closer, its voice dripping hunger. "And why should we take her?" "Because," Morgath purred, her eyes flashing, "through her, you will have dominion. Isolda is untainted, a vessel untouched. I offer her to the Alpha of Duskwood, your chosen pawn. In exchange, you will see Kale's ruin delivered into my hands." The pool boiled, the shadows murmuring among themselves. The Alpha of Duskwood seeks dominion beyond his forests. A bride with noble lineage would strengthen his claim, but Kale is not easily undone. Morgath's smile widened, then strike at his weakness. He has shown interest in the veiled girl, Selena, the cursed wretch. She stirs something in him. Destroy her, and Kale's throne will crumble. At that, Isolda's breath caught. Selena. Always Selena. Even here, even among monsters, her half-sister's name poisoned everything. Her nails dug into her palms, jealousy burning hotter than fear. The shadows hissed in agreement. "Very well. Deliver the girl as bride to Duskwood, and we will grant you power to unmake Kale's reign." Morgath bowed deeply, satisfied. Unseen by them, a slender figure crouched just outside the chamber door, her heart hammering against her ribs. Selena had followed when she sensed Morgath slipping into ritual. She hadn't meant to overhear treason, but the gods had thrust it upon her. Her veil clung to her damp cheeks as she pressed closer, trembling. She heard everything. Morgath's bargain, Isolda's offering, the plot against Kale. Her first instinct was fear. Fear of discovery, fear of punishment, fear of what would come if Kale fell. But beneath the fear, something stronger stirred. A spark of loyalty she had tried so hard to deny. Kale had promised to protect her if she pledged herself. She had not given him that vow, and yet now, with his life in peril, she could not remain silent. "I must warn him," she thought, clutching the stone wall for strength. "Even if it costs me everything." She rose carefully, her footsteps light as whispers as she retreated down the corridor. But the gods, cruel as they were, wove another fate for her. A hand shot out from the shadows, seizing her wrist. Selena gasped, struggling, but the iron grip tightened. A palace guard stepped into the dim light, but not Kale's guard. His tabard bore the mark of Blackthornne, Morgath's loyal dog. "Well, well," the guard sneered, yanking her forward. "Spying on your mistress, are you, little ghost?" Selena's blood ran cold. Behind him, more of Morgath's spies emerged from the gloom, their eyes glinting with malice. They had been waiting, watching. She had walked straight into their snare. "Please," she whispered, trying to wrench free. "You don't understand." "Oh, we understand," the guard cut her off, jerking the veil from her face. Her cursed visage stared back at them, twisted by Morgath's spell. They recoiled slightly, but then their laughter rang out. "Hideous thing, no wonder your lady keeps you in shadows." Selena's humiliation burned hot, but her terror was stronger. If they delivered her back to Morgath now, the punishment would be swift and merciless. Yet in the pit of her fear, a stubborn flame refused to die. Kyle's voice echoed in her memory. "I will guard you. No harm will touch you while I live." She clung to that vow like a lifeline, but as rough hands bound her arms, dragging her deeper into the estate, Selena knew that Morgath's game had shifted. She had not only overheard the plot, she had been caught within it. Far away in the royal wing of the palace, Kyle paced before the fire, restless. Something gnawed at him. A whisper of unease carried on the night. Damon had gone to scout the northern borders, leaving Kale with his thoughts of Selena, of her defiance, of the way her lips had trembled when she begged him not to betray her secret. The flames crackled and Kale's fists clenched. "Where are you, little wolf?" he murmured. He had never before allowed a woman to unsettle his focus. And yet, every instinct screamed she was in danger. He did not yet know how right he was. The shadows in the Blackthornne estate grew thick as tar, clinging to the stone walls like a living curse. Selena's wrists burned where the iron shackles bit into her skin, their edges carved with runes that pulsed faintly with Lady Morgath's dark enchantments. Every breath she drew tasted of dust and decay. The dungeons beneath the Blackthornne halls had never been meant for comfort. They were meant to break spirits. Selena had been dragged down here the moment Morgath's spies caught her. She fought like a wild wolf, her nails drawing blood, her teeth snapping until the guards wrapped her mouth in chains of shadow. Even so, her defiance blazed in her eyes. That fire was the very thing Morgath wanted to extinguish. Lady Morgath entered the chamber with the glide of a serpent. Her long gown shimmered like black oil, and the staff she carried thrummed with power, ancient, forbidden magic. The runes carved into its shaft seemed to twist and writhe when touched by torchlight. "My dear stepdaughter," Morgath purred, her voice low, rich with cruelty. "Did you think you could slither through my halls unnoticed? Did you think your loyalty to Kale would protect you here, in my domain?" Selena lifted her head, lips cracked, and forced a laugh. "I thought nothing could wreak more than this dungeon, but then, here you are." Morgath's eyes gleamed with venom. With a flick of her wrist, the staff sent a current of shadow into Selena's chest. Pain unlike any blade ripped through her veins, crawling into her heart like icy fire. Selena arched back, teeth clenched, refusing to scream, though her entire body shook with torment. "Such a brave little wolf," Morgath whispered, watching the girl's body tremble. "But bravery burns fast under the right fire. Shall we see how long yours lasts?" The darkness coiled tighter, squeezing Selena's ribs until her lungs rattled for air. Morgath leaned close, her breath brushing Selena's ear. "You should not have tried to warn him. Now you will watch him fall. The council will see Kale stripped of every right, every claim. And when they cast him out, I will ensure he crawls back to me, or dies alone." Selena gasped, her voice raw but steady. "He'll never kneel to you, and neither will I." The strike came sharp and merciless. A surge of magic split through her like molten steel. Selena's cry finally tore free, echoing down the dungeon corridor, but even that sound carried defiance. Morgath's lips curved into a smile. Your pain nourishes me, girl. You are nothing but a tool, and when I am done, you'll beg to betray him." Above the dungeons, the halls of Blackthornne estate simmered with tension. The council had gathered earlier that evening, whispers flaring about Kale's unrelenting defiance of their laws. Morgath had stirred the fire perfectly, her schemes threading suspicion through the air like smoke. But Kale did not wait for their verdict. The doors to Blackthornne shattered beneath his hand, wood splintering as if struck by lightning. His presence stormed into the estate like a tempest. The Lichen King's aura was impossible to contain. His power rolled out in waves, rattling the chandeliers, silencing the nobles mid-breath. His eyes glowed a molten gold, sharp as a blade drawn for blood. "Where is she?" His voice cracked like thunder, echoing through the grand hall. The council rose from their seats, several elders gasping. One braver alpha stepped forward, his silver crest pinned upon his chest. "King Kale, you have no right to storm another house." "No right?" Kale's snarl cut the man's words short. "My mate is here, shackled by the hands of a traitor. Every right you deny me I will take by force." The council exchanged uneasy glances. To defy the king in open chamber was unthinkable, but Morgath's influence was heavy upon them. She stepped forward now, graceful, smiling as though the chaos pleased her. "Ah, Kale," she said, feigning sorrow. "Always so dramatic. The girl you seek is guilty of treason. She conspired to undermine the council's will. Surely even you cannot protect such betrayal." Kale's jaw clenched, his gaze fixed on Morgath, the air between them crackling with pure hatred. "You call it betrayal. I call it loyalty. To me. To truth." Morgath's smile thinned, but her mask held. "Do not forget yourself. You stand in Blackthornne. You stand before the council. I stand before cowards." Kale roared, his voice shaking the hall. The torches guttered, shadows reeling as though the very estate recoiled from his fury. "You would rather chain innocence than face the corruption in your midst. If protecting her defies your traditions, then hear me well. I defy them all." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Elders whispered furiously, some pale with shock, others wide-eyed with awe. No alpha had ever declared such open rebellion against the council's traditions, not even a king. Kale's next words struck like lightning. "Selena is mine to protect, and I swear by the blood of my crown, any who stand between us will fall." The golden fire in his eyes flared, forcing even the boldest alphas to step back. The council's authority shook that night, not from Morgath's schemes, but from the raw power of one king's vow. In the dungeons below, Selena trembled in her chains, each breath a battle. Yet as the echoes of Kale's voice thundered down through the stone, her heart surged with strength. He had come. The guards shifted nervously, sensing the storm above. Morgath's staff flickered, its magic faltering for the first time. And in that moment, Selena's pain turned to hope. The war for her soul, and for Kale's throne, had begun. The dungeon shuddered as though the stones themselves bowed to the fury of the Lichen King. Dust sifted from the vaulted ceiling and the torchlight flickered, casting jagged shadows across Selena's bruised face. Shackled to the wall, her body trembled not from fear, but from the echo of Kale's voice that had torn through the estate above. He was coming. The guards shifted uneasily, their eyes darting toward the heavy doors that sealed the dungeon from the grand hall. No chain, no rune-carved lock could bar a storm like Kale. Already the iron hinges groaned as power pressed against them from the other side. Selena sucked in a breath, hope and terror tangling in her chest. She knew Morgath. She knew this would not end with a simple rescue. Her stepmother always planned 3 moves ahead, and the dungeon was not a prison. It was a trap. The doors burst open. Kale filled the threshold, his presence an overwhelming force of fire and dominion. Golden eyes glowed like molten suns in the half-darkness, and the air thickened with his aura. The guards faltered, some dropping their weapons, others stumbling back, too cowed to lift a hand against him. "Selena," he said, his voice rough, as though her name itself was carved from stone. Her chains rattled as she lifted her head. "Kale." Before she could finish, Morgath stepped from the shadows. Her gown flowed like liquid midnight, the staff in her hand blazing with runes alive with serpentine power. Her smile was sharp enough to cut. "You came, my king, predictable as always." Kale growled, a low rumble that shook the walls. "Release her, Morgath, or nothing in these halls will stand when I am through." "Ah," Morgath sighed, her tone mockingly tender. "But if I release her, what then? Do you dare bind yourself to a cursed girl? Do you dare challenge the laws of your kind for a creature marked by shadows? You would risk your throne for her?" Kale's gaze did not waver from Selena. The sight of her, bruised, bloodied, yet unbroken, ignited something primal and unyielding within him. He took a step forward, power rolling off him in waves. "Not risk, choose." Morgath's smile faltered, just slightly. "Then you seal your doom." Her staff flared, unleashing a torrent of shadow that screamed through the dungeon like a storm of blades. Kyle's shield of golden fire burst forth, colliding with the dark magic in a clash that shook the earth beneath their feet. For a moment it was light against darkness, a war of pure power. Selena gasped as the backlash of their magic burned against the curse in her veins. The mark Morgath had left on her writhed like a living serpent beneath her skin, clawing against her ribs. Kyle turned to her, his chest heaving. His decision was carved into his face. No hesitation, no fear, only resolve. He cut through Morgath's magic with a roar and reached her side, his hand searing against her cheek. "I will not lose you." "Kyle, no," she choked, her body straining against the pain of the curse. "If you bind yourself to me, the curse will destroy you too. I can't." "You are mine," he growled, voice breaking with the force of his vow. "And I will bind us so deeply that no curse, no shadow, no counsel will ever tear you from me." Before she could protest again, he bit into his palm, blood welling bright and red. His eyes locked with hers, fierce, blazing, unshakable. "By blood, by bond, by the fire of my crown," Kyle whispered, pressing his bleeding hand to her lips. "I mark you." The power struck like lightning. Selena's lips parted, her tongue tasting the iron of his blood. Heat ignited in her veins, colliding with the cold venom of the curse. The two forces warred within her, burning, clawing, entwining until it felt as though her very soul might tear apart. She screamed, not in fear, but in the unbearable ecstasy of power that roared through her. Kale's hand moved to the side of her throat, his thumb pressing against her racing pulse. His fangs grazed her skin, sinking deep enough to spill blood, sealing the oath. Golden fire wrapped around them both, curling like chains made of light. The dungeon shook with the force of it, Morgath's runes sputtering as if strangled by a stronger power. Selena's eyes flew open. For a heartbeat they glowed, half golden with Kyle's fire, half black with Morgath's curse. Desire and terror clashed inside her as she felt herself belonging to him in a way deeper than flesh, deeper than fate. The bond was forbidden. Every law, every tradition, every shadow of the council condemned such a blood oath between king and mate. But Kale had done it. He had claimed her against the curse, against destiny itself. She gasped, her body trembling as the bond sealed, her veins alight with both agony and desire. Her voice broke against his chest. "Kyle, what have you done?" "What I must," he said, his lips pressing into her hair, his arms crushing her against him as though he could shield her from the world itself. "You are mine now, and nothing can take you from me." From the other side of the chamber, Morgath's scream split the air. Fury like poison twisted her beautiful face, her staff cracking with unstable power. "Fool," she shrieked. "You doom yourself and your throne. You doom all of us." Her words echoed, but Kale ignored them. His only focus was the girl trembling in his arms, her breath shallow, her eyes fever-bright with the weight of what had just been done. And above them, unseen, another set of eyes watched. Isolda. Hidden in the upper gallery of the dungeon, the rejected heir of Blackthornne clenched the railing so hard her nails broke. Her chest heaved, rage pouring through her like wildfire. She had watched Kale choose, had seen him bind himself to the girl who had stolen everything, her pride, her claim, her place. In that moment, her grief calcified into something sharper, darker. "I will see her burn," she whispered to herself, her voice trembling with hatred, "if it is the last thing I do." The vow hung in the air like a blade, unseen but deadly, as the forbidden bond sealed itself into fate. The corridors of Blackthornne Estate still hummed with the echo of Kale's power, long after he carried Selena from the dungeon. The guards had melted away like shadows at dawn, terrified of the wrath of their king. Yet despite his triumph, the storm on Kale's face did not ease. He had claimed her with blood and vow, and though the bond pulsed strong in his chest, he felt its tremor. Selena's body was light in his arms, her head resting against his shoulder. She wasn't unconscious, but her silence gnawed at him. Every now and then her breath caught, as if the bond burned too deep, the curse and oath clashing inside her veins. Kyle could feel it too, the tension of shadow fighting fire. He brought her to his chambers within the royal encampment that had been pitched outside Blackthorne's gates. The tent was not of canvas, but of thick, warded silk, reinforced with silver poles, fit for a king on campaign. He laid her gently on the furs, and when her lashes fluttered, his chest loosened just slightly. "Drink," he commanded softly, pouring water into a goblet and pressing it to her lips. Her fingers brushed his as she obeyed, the simple contact sparking with the resonance of their bond. She winced, setting the cup aside. "It hurts," she whispered, her voice fragile. "The curse fights you. Fights us." "I know," Kale said, his jaw tightening. "But I would rather burn beside you than let the darkness have you." She stared at him, wide-eyed, torn between awe and terror. "Why? Why risk your throne, your people, for someone like me?" Kale turned from her, pacing toward the tent's central brazier. The firelight gilded his broad shoulders, outlining the scars that crossed his back. Pale lines against bronze skin, old but not forgotten. His voice, when it came, was rawer than she had ever heard. "Because I have already lost everything once." Selena's breath caught. He did not face her, but his posture betrayed a weight heavier than crowns. "My first mate," he said, the words reluctant but unstoppable now. Her name was Leora. She was not chosen by the moon, not bound by fate. I claimed her by choice, by heart. Or so I thought. The flame snapped and his hands curled into fists. She betrayed me to a rival alpha, gave him my movements, my secrets, my trust. The night of my first ascension as king, my convoy was ambushed. I buried half my warriors that day. Leora fled with him. I tracked them, thinking I would bring her home. He stopped, chest heaving. Instead, I found her carrying his child. Selena's lips parted in shock. Kyle finally turned, his golden eyes fierce but hollowed by memory. From that day I swore never to trust another woman, never to give my bond freely again. I kept my throne with steel and fire, but never with faith. Silence filled the chamber, broken only by Selena's ragged breaths. She had seen Kale as unshakable, untouchable, a king carved from stone and flame. But now, in the flicker of firelight, she saw the scar beneath the crown. A man wounded not by blade, but by betrayal. Her heart clenched painfully. Slowly she sat up, ignoring the curse's bite. She reached for him, her veiled hand trembling as it touched his arm. "Kyle, I am not her. I would never." The bond thrummed between them, her sincerity like balm against his jagged soul. His eyes softened, just barely, as though he wanted to believe her but feared the cost of hope. For the first time, Selena didn't fear the king. She feared his loneliness. Yet outside the sanctuary of his tent, forces stirred. At the High Council chamber in the capital, whispers carried like smoke. Morgath stood at the center of the marble floor, her staff dimmed to appear less threatening, her posture one of feigned humility. But her words were poison, carefully dripped into eager ears. "The Alpha King has bound himself to a girl marked by curses," she declared, voice smooth as silk. "A girl I raised as my stepdaughter, yes, but cursed by my own hand for her disobedience. Her ugliness was only the surface. Beneath, she is touched by shadow. Tell me, wise elders, how else could her magic manifest except through forbidden arts?" The counselors stirred, their robes whispering, their faces grave. "You claim she is a witch?" one demanded. Morgath lowered her eyes, feigning sorrow. "I claim nothing, but I have seen her with power that does not belong to mortals, and now through her she has ensnared the king himself." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Words like witch, curse, danger passed from lip to lip. Morgath's mouth curved slightly, unseen beneath her veil. Seeds of doubt had been sown, and doubt was deadlier than any blade. Back in his chamber, Kale sat heavily beside Selena. The vulnerability he had shown weighed on him like exposed flesh in battle, yet when he looked at her, he did not regret it. She was watching him not with fear but with something gentler. "Kale," she said softly, "you are not alone anymore. Not unless you choose to be." His hand lifted, brushing against the edge of her veil, but he stopped short of removing it. Instead, he cupped her cheek through the fabric, his thumb stroking the outline of her jaw. "You say that now," he murmured, "but the world will not be so kind. They will call you cursed. They will call you witch. And when they do, you may hate me for binding you to this fate." Her eyes shone with defiance. "Let them call me what they will. I already lived a life in shadows. But with you, at least the shadows burn." Something inside him broke, or perhaps it healed. He bent his forehead to hers, the bond between them pulsing steady now, as though responding to their unity. But beyond the walls, Morgath's poison had begun to spread, and soon the council would demand answers. The capital's great hall was a place few dared enter without trembling. Hewn from stone older than kingdoms, its pillars rose like blackened spears into a ceiling painted with the constellations of the first wolf kings. The floor gleamed with polished obsidian, reflecting the fires of 100 braziers that burned along the edges. Tonight the braziers burned higher, their flames fed with resin that gave off a biting, incense-like smoke. Tonight was not a council meeting. It was a trial. Selena stood at the center of the hall, veiled as always, her wrists bound with silver-threaded chains. They weren't needed. She had no weapons, no armies. But Morgath had demanded them, insisting that only silver could suppress witch-born tricks. On a dais above, the lords of the High Council assembled. 12 alphas of old bloodlines, each bearing the mark of their packs, their robes heavy with fur and sigil. Behind them, the carved moon of stone loomed over the chamber, waiting for the rise of the true moon outside. At the foot of the dais, Kale stood, unchained but far from free. His crown of black iron and gold rested heavy on his brow, and his gaze burned hotter than the torches. He had argued, raged, threatened to burn the chamber to ash if Selena were put on trial. But the council had overruled him. For the first time since his ascension, the king had been forced to bow to tradition. Selena could feel his fury through the bond. It pulsed in her veins like a second heartbeat, clashing with the curse that writhed whenever Morgath drew near. Lady Morgath glided into view now, robes whispering like dead leaves. She bowed with theatrical reverence to the council, her staff dimmed as if to mock humility. "My lords," she began, her voice smooth as velvet, "we are gathered under the eyes of the moon to weigh the fate of a girl who stands accused of witchcraft and seduction. She is no ordinary maid. She has beguiled our king, ensnaring him with shadow-born sorcery. I know this, for she was once under my roof, and I cursed her. Yes, cursed her for disobedience. Yet what mortal curse can twist a soul so thoroughly unless darkness already lurked within? Gasps rippled through the assembly. Selena's fists clenched in her chains, but she forced herself still. She would not give Morgath the satisfaction of flinching. Kyle's snarl split the silence. Enough of your lies, Morgath. You cursed her not for wickedness, but because her beauty and spirit threatened your vanity, and you dare cloak your malice in piety? Beauty? Morgath purred, her eyes glittering as she turned back toward Selena. Shall we test that claim? The murmurs grew louder. The lords shifted restlessly. The high priest of the council raised his hand, calling for order. The truth will be revealed when the moon is at its zenith, he declared. If she is pure, the moon's light will vindicate her. If cursed, the curse will rise and reveal itself. Selena's blood turned to ice. Kale's hand twitched at his side, aching to draw his blade to drag her from the chamber by force. But she felt it through the bond, his conflict, his rage, his helplessness. He could command armies, but tradition held even kings by the throat. The minutes dragged like hours. The moon's light crept higher through the vast window at the rear of the hall, a silver beam sliding across the floor until it fell upon Selena where she stood. The bond pulsed violently. The curse stirred. No, she whispered, shaking her head beneath the veil. She tried to fight it, to suppress the twisting magic that clawed at her skin. But the curse was Morgath's masterpiece, born of envy, designed to humiliate her in the one moment she most needed strength. Her breath came in ragged bursts as the veil slipped from her face. Gasps and cries echoed through the chamber. The lords leaned forward in shock. Where beauty should have been, the curse wove its cruel mask. Selena's face contorted, her skin darkened by crawling shadows, her features distorted into something monstrous. Kale's roar shattered the chamber's composure. He surged forward only to be blocked by guards and counselors. His eyes blazed gold, his fangs bared. "Do not look at her," he thundered. "This is not who she is." But the damage was done. Morgath's laughter rang like bells twisted out of tune. "Behold, my lords, the witch unveiled. Does this look like a queen fit to stand beside our king?" Selena's knees buckled. Shame burned hotter than fire as she clutched at the chains, as if she could tear the curse from her flesh. Tears blurred her vision, but through them she saw Kale, not recoiling, not flinching, but fighting like a caged beast to reach her. His voice thundered across the hall, silencing even Morgath's triumph. "She is mine," he roared. "Blood to blood, soul to soul, I have bound myself to her. You will not touch her." The council erupted in uproar. Some shouted that he had defiled tradition. Others demanded Selena's execution before her witchcraft could spread. The priest slammed his staff against the floor, calling for silence, but silence never truly returned. The hall buzzed with fury and fear, while above them, the full moon bathed Selena in merciless silver light. And in that moment, as the curse writhed across her skin, Selena realized the trial was not just about proving her innocence, it was about survival. The moon had not yet descended from its high throne when the trial dissolved into chaos. Gasps and whispers still lingered in the vast marble chamber like smoke from a battlefield. Selena stood at the center, trembling yet unbowed, her body marked by the curse that twisted her reflection. Her beauty had become a cruel spectacle in the eyes of the council. Her soft skin etched with veins of shadow, her lips pale as frost. Yet her gaze burned, fierce, unbroken, daring them all to strip her of dignity but never her spirit. The lords, draped in their ceremonial robes of blood red and silver, leaned forward on their thrones like vultures awaiting carrion. Their voices rose in a storm of suspicion. A witch. An enchantress. She has ensnared the Alpha King. Lady Morgath stood to the side, her serpent-like smile gleaming as she fanned the flames of hysteria. Every flick of her jeweled fingers, every silken word she spoke, was calculated poison. "My lords," she purred, her tone like honey over steel. "Is it not obvious? This girl has bewitched our king. His eyes see not with wisdom, but with lust. He is blind to her corruption." Selena's hands clenched at her sides, her breath sharp, but before she could speak, Kale's voice thundered across the chamber. "Enough." The hall fell silent as though the very walls feared his wrath. Kale, the Alpha King, stepped forward, his golden eyes blazing like molten fire. His black cloak swirled around him, and the mark of his bloodline, the sigil of the first wolf, seemed to burn brighter upon his chest plate. He did not hesitate, did not falter. His voice cut through the thick tension, resonant and absolute. "You speak of witchcraft," he said, glaring at the lords, his voice echoing like the toll of a war bell. "You speak of seduction and weakness, but I tell you this, I see her soul, not her face, not her curse, her soul." The words landed like an oath sworn in blood. Selena's chest ached as she looked at him, her throat tightening with a storm of emotion she could barely contain. No man had ever spoken for her like this, not even her father. And here Kale was, a king bound by ancient law, daring to risk everything to shield her from scorn. The council erupted. "He has lost his reason. She clouds his judgment. A king who cannot see truth cannot rule." Morgath raised her arms, commanding silence, her smirk widening. "See how far he has fallen, my lords. He would defy us all for the sake of a girl, a curse-born creature whose very presence defiles the court." But Kale did not yield. He stepped closer to Selena, his towering frame a shield between her and the pack of wolves who called themselves rulers. "She is no curse. She is mine," he declared. His words, though simple, carried the force of dominion, of an alpha who bowed to none. "And if you call her a witch, then call me her spellbound fool, for I would rather be bound to her than free among liars and cowards." The silence that followed was deafening. Selena's knees weakened, though not from fear. A warmth spread through her chest, mingling with the sting of her curse. For the first time, she felt seen, not as a pawn, not as a daughter of betrayal, but as someone worthy of loyalty. The lords, however, were not swayed. Their murmurs grew sharp, voices like knives scraping against stone. One of the elder lords rose, his white beard trembling with rage. "If the king cannot discern his duty from his desire, then perhaps it is time we questioned his right to the throne." The words struck like a spear. Kale's jaw tightened. His hand instinctively went to the hilt of his sword, though he did not draw it. Instead, his gaze swept the chamber, daring any of them to speak further. "You question my throne?" His voice dropped, low and dangerous. "Then know this, my throne was not given, it was won. With blood, with fire, with the bones of those who thought me unworthy." His golden eyes narrowed. "Do you wish to test me again?" The elder lord faltered, but others were emboldened by Morgath's venom. "A king who places a cursed woman above his people is no king." Another spat. "He is a slave to weakness." Selena felt the sting of the words, but before she could speak, Kale's hand brushed against hers. A fleeting touch, silent, fierce. It told her all she needed to know. He would not let them break her. Meanwhile, Damon, who had stood quietly at the edge of the chamber, observed everything with a sharp gaze. His wolf senses picked up more than the lord's outrage. He caught the subtle flicker of Morgath's magic, the faint scent of shadows clinging to her like decay. Something darker was at play, something the council was blind to in their frenzy. He leaned closer to one of his spies hidden among the guards and whispered, "Search her chambers. Tonight. If I'm right, Morgath's ties are deeper than whispers. She has made a pact with the Shadow Court." The spy bowed and vanished, slipping into the darkness like smoke. Back in the chamber, the council's fury swelled. The lords clamored for Kale's accountability, for proof that Selena was not a threat. Morgath fanned the chaos with masterful precision, her voice dripping with false concern. "We do not seek his ruin," she said sweetly. "We seek clarity. If the girl is innocent, let her prove it. And if she is not, let the king prove his loyalty to his people over his lust." Selena's blood chilled, but Kale's growl silenced her thoughts. "She is not yours to judge," he snapped. "She is under my protection." Morgath's smile widened, cold and triumphant. "Then may your protection be tested, my king. For if you defy the council, you defy the pack itself." The words struck like a blade, splitting the chamber in two. The lords murmured, divided between loyalty and rebellion, fear and ambition. Kale stood tall, unyielding, his hand still close to Selena's. His voice rang out, fierce and resolute. "Then let the pack hear me now. I am Kale, son of Fenris, Alpha King of Bloodstone. My rule is not a gift, nor is it yours to strip away. I have bled for this throne. I have burned for it, and I will not bow to fear, nor to your petty manipulations. If you call me weak for defending the one I claim, then let the whole world know. I will gladly bear that weakness because it is stronger than all your deceit." The chamber shook with his roar, a sound that carried the weight of 1,000 wolves. Selena's breath caught, her heart hammering. She could see it, the raw, unguarded truth of him, the defiance, the devotion, the vulnerability he showed only when it mattered most. Morgath's smile faltered, though only for a flicker, but Damon saw it, and he knew then that her schemes were unraveling. The truth would come to light, and when it did, the Shadow Court's hand would be exposed. But for now the trial was not over. The lords would not yield so easily, and the Alpha King had declared his defiance, making enemies of many who once bowed. The war had begun, not with swords or claws, but with truth spoken too loudly for the liars to endure. The trial's echoes had not yet faded when the whispers began to coil through the halls of Bloodstone. The lords returned to their keeps, their voices heavy with suspicion and unease. Kale's defiance had bought Selena a fragile reprieve, but the council's doubt hung thick as storm clouds over the kingdom. Selena, though shielded by Kale's decree, could not shake the feeling of eyes following her wherever she went. Servants lingered longer than necessary in corridors. Guards glanced at her as though weighing their loyalty to their king against their fear of her supposed witchcraft. Even the moonlight that spilled across her chambers seemed colder, harsher. It was in that quiet unease that Elder Oren came to her. The old wolf was unlike the others. His hair was silver as frost, his eyes clear and deep, like wells that had witnessed more years than anyone could count. Oren had been a counselor to Kale's father, and though his frame bent with age, his presence carried a weight that even the proudest lords dared not dismiss. He entered her chambers without herald, moving with the silent confidence of one who did not need permission. Selena straightened, startled, her hand instinctively pressing to her chest, as if to shield her heart. "Elder Oren," she said softly, bowing her head. He raised a hand, halting her. "Do not bow to me, child. You've bent your spine enough under the weight of others' scorn." His voice was gentle but firm, like the steadying hand of a father. Selena's lips parted, confusion shadowing her expression. "Then why have you come?" "To question me as the others do." His eyes studied her, keen, searching, as though he looked not at her face but beyond it. Finally he sighed. "No, I have come to tell you the truth, though it may wound as much as it heals." She frowned, uncertain. "The truth?" Oren stepped closer, lowering himself into the chair near the fire. He gestured for her to sit opposite him. She obeyed, her pulse quickening. The flames threw their shadows across the walls, and in that flickering light, his words fell like stones into a still pond. "You carry a curse, Selena. That much all can see. But curses are not born from nothing. They are chains forged for a reason." Selena's breath caught. "I know. My mother." He silenced her with a slight shake of his head. "Not your mother. Morgath would have you believe she is your author, the hand that shackled your fate. But the truth is older, darker and more dangerous." Her chest tightened. "Then, who cursed me?" Oren's gaze deepened, his voice lowering as though even the stone walls might betray his words if spoken too loudly. The curse was woven at your birth. It was not punishment, it was restraint, a lock placed upon a door that others feared to open. For within you, Selena, lies a power greater than you realize, greater even than Morgath's black arts. Selena blinked, her hands curling into fists in her lap. Power. But I have none. The curse only weakens me, twists me. The curse, Oren interrupted, his tone sharp as a blade, is the very reason you cannot see what you hold. It smothers your gift, muffles it like a gag on a voice. But if it were ever broken, his eyes gleamed with something that might have been awe or fear. You could eclipse Morgath herself. The room seemed to tilt around her, her heart hammered, her throat dry. Eclipse her? He nodded. You are the daughter of two lines that should never have crossed, the blood of wolves and the blood of ancient seers. That union gave you strength beyond measure. But those who feared it, those who wished to control it, sealed it away before you could grow into it. Selena's mind reeled. Her stepmother's cruelty, the whispers of witchcraft, the curse that burned against Kale's bond, suddenly they all seemed like threads of a larger tapestry. So all this time, I was not cursed because I was weak. I was cursed because I was dangerous. Oren leaned forward, his hand closing over hers. His skin was rough, but his grip was steady. Dangerous, yes, but not evil. Remember that, child. Power is a blade. It cuts at the wielder as easily as the foe. What matters is how you choose to wield it. Tears pricked at her eyes, hot and stinging. For so long she had seen herself as broken, as flawed, as something to be hidden. Now the truth threatened to shatter the fragile walls she had built around her heart. Her lips trembled. If I truly hold such power, then why tell me now? Why not let me remain in ignorance? Oren's expression softened. Because ignorance will no longer protect you. Morgath will not stop. She feels the stirrings of your strength, even through the curse. And when the Shadow Court's pact comes to fruition, she will do everything in her power to destroy you. Unless you are ready. The Shadow Court. Damon's suspicions echoed in her mind. Her stomach knotted. Oren stood, his figure framed by the glow of the fire. You must begin training in secret, not in Kale's sight, not yet. If the council knew what you carried, they would see not a savior, but a threat to be extinguished. Selena swallowed hard, torn between terror and resolve. How do I train with something I cannot even touch? His lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. With patience, with discipline, and with pain. For every curse has cracks, and through those cracks, your true nature will bleed. You must learn to feel it, to coax it out, to master it before it masters you. He moved toward the door but paused, his eyes lingering on her. But beware this, Selena. Should the curse shatter too soon, your gift will not come gently. It will consume you. And if that happens, not even Kale's devotion will be enough to save you. The words hung heavy in the air, like a prophecy spoken by the moon itself. When Oren left, the chamber felt colder, emptier, yet charged with new purpose. Selena sat in silence, staring at her trembling hands. For the first time, she did not see weakness. She saw chains she longed to break. That night, under the shrouded moon, she slipped from her chambers. She found a secluded glade beyond the palace walls where the wind whispered secrets through the trees and the earth smelled of moss and rain. There, she closed her eyes and reached inward, searching for the pulse beneath the curse. It was faint, like embers smothered under ash, but it was there, waiting. Her breath came uneven, her veins burning as though fire and ice warred within her. Shadows coiled at the edges of her vision, her body trembling under the weight of the unseen. Yet she pressed on, whispering to the hidden force within her. I am not broken, she said through clenched teeth. I am not cursed. I am more. For a moment, the curse flared, punishing her with searing pain. She fell to her knees, gasping, her nails digging into the earth. But then, just for a heartbeat, the embers glowed brighter. She felt it, a surge of warmth, of strength, raw and unshaped, but undeniably hers. Her lips curved into a shaky smile. She had touched it, and though her body ached, though her heart still trembled with fear, Selena knew this was only the beginning. In the shadows beyond the trees, unseen eyes watched her. Damon, silent as a ghost, had followed her trail. He had heard Oren's words and suspected her secret training. His fists clenched at his sides. If Selena truly carried such power, she might become their salvation or their doom. Either way, the cursed truth had been set free, and nothing in Bloodstone would ever be the same again. The moon sat heavy above Bloodstone, veiled behind streaks of storm clouds. A restless air clung to the palace that night, carrying with it the scent of unease. The lords had left after the trial, yet their suspicions still haunted the walls. And within those walls, betrayal brewed. Isolda Blackthornne moved like a shadow through the king's corridors. Her silken gown whispered against the stone floors, her eyes glinting with malice barely concealed beneath her painted charm. Morgath's daughter had long grown tired of being the second glance, the overlooked flower wilting in Selena's reluctant glow. Selena, cursed and veiled though she was, had drawn Kale's attention, and in Isolda's mind, that was unforgivable. She carried with her a goblet, the wine within shimmering faintly with an oily sheen. Poison, crafted from the black herbs of the Shadow Court, smuggled through Morgath's network of loyal servants. A single sip would not kill instantly, but weaken the mighty Alpha King, drag his strength into the mud until his enemies could strike. She rehearsed her smile in the candlelight as she neared Kale's chambers. Inside, Kale sat before the hearth, his broad frame shadowed by the fire's glow. He had shed his armor, but his presence was still that of a king, a predator at rest, never truly unguarded. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, unsettled by the ripples of treachery in the air, though his mind dismissed it as the remnants of council disputes. Isolda entered with a soft bow, her voice sweet as honey. "My lord," she said, offering the goblet. "A gift for the one who carries the burdens of all. You fight for the safety of your people, yet you never take a moment for yourself. Please, drink." Kale's eyes narrowed, the faintest flicker of suspicion glinting in their depths. But he was not without courtesy. He accepted the goblet, swirling the dark wine as if studying its secrets. "You seek to please your king," he murmured, his tone unreadable. "Tell me, Isolda, why now? Why this sudden devotion?" Her smile trembled, but she masked it quickly with a laugh. "Because I have always admired you, my king. It is only—" She, her lips curled, venom in her tone, "who stands between us. Selena has bewitched you. I can see it in your eyes. But if you cast her aside, I could give you loyalty without hesitation, a consort who would never shame you before your council." Kale's jaw tightened, his wolf bristling at the insult toward Selena. Yet before he could answer, he lifted the goblet to his lips. The moment the wine touched his tongue, he felt it. Wrongness. A bitter aftertaste that no vineyard could explain. His throat seized, heat flashing through his veins. His body lurched, strength bleeding out of him like water through a sieve. The goblet crashed to the floor, crimson spilling across the stone like blood. "You," he growled, his voice thick, staggering to his feet. His wolf clawed within, fighting the spreading venom, but his limbs weakened, buckling under him. Isolda stepped back, her face twisting into triumph. "Yes, my king, the mighty Alpha, brought low by the one you ignored. You could have chosen me, yet you favored her. Now you will pay the price." Selena woke with a start, a pain stabbing through her chest as if her heart had been struck. She gasped, clutching her side. The bond. Kale's suffering reached her through their blood oath, a tether she could neither break nor ignore. His heartbeat faltered in her veins, dragging her from her bed before she could think. Her feet flew across the cold corridors, her veil trailing behind her like smoke. She burst into Kale's chamber just as he collapsed to his knees. His eyes burned with fury, yet dimmed with weakness. Isolda stood over him, her smile sharp as a blade. "Kale!" Selena's cry cut through the room, raw and desperate. She rushed forward, kneeling beside him. His skin was pale, damp with sweat, his breath shallow. The poison clawed at him, eating through his veins like fire. Isolda sneered. "You should thank me, sister. Once he's gone, there will be no need for you to pretend at being more than you are. His throne will be mine. His power, ours." Selena's head snapped up, her eyes blazing through the veil. "You will never wear his crown." Something inside her broke then, chains snapping, walls collapsing. The ember Elder Oren had told her of flared, a searing light igniting in her core. Power surged, wild and unruly, fighting the curse that bound it. It hurt. Every nerve screamed, every bone shook as though her body would tear apart. But she refused to let go. She pressed her trembling hands against Kale's chest, whispering words she did not know she knew. The curse lashed at her, punishing her rebellion, searing her flesh as black veins crawled up her arms. Pain ripped through her body, but she pushed harder, drawing the poison from his veins into herself. Kale gasped, his chest rising with a shudder as the venom lost its hold. His heartbeat steadied, faint but fighting. Selena's scream filled the chamber, her body arching as the poison fused with the curse, spreading agony through her blood. Her vision blurred, her body convulsing. She collapsed against him, shaking violently, the curse now gnawing at her like a beast unleashed. "Selena!" Kale's voice, hoarse but alive, broke through the haze. His arms caught her, cradling her trembling form. He could feel it, the curse burning her, consuming her to keep him alive. Fury and terror collided in his chest. Isolda stumbled backward, horror dawning on her face as Kale rose, his strength returning. His eyes glowed golden, his wolf fully awakened. "You dared," he snarled, his voice thunder, "to poison your king." Guards burst through the chamber doors, drawn by the commotion. They froze at the sight, Kale standing tall once more, Selena writhing weakly in his arms, and Isolda cornered, her treachery laid bare. Kale's gaze cut to the guards. "Take her. She will answer for treason before the council." Isolda shrieked, thrashing as the guards seized her. "She's the witch. She cursed me to do it. You're blind, Kale. She'll destroy us all." Her screams echoed as she was dragged away, her words weaving fresh doubt among the witnesses. Kale ignored her, lowering his gaze to Selena. Her skin was pale, her veins dark where the curse had spread, her lips trembling as she clung weakly to him. "You foolish, brave girl," he whispered, brushing damp strands of hair from her face. "You saved me. But at what cost?" Selena's eyes fluttered open, filled with pain but also fierce determination. "I won't. Let them take you," she rasped. Then the curse surged again, and she went limp in his arms. Kyle held her tighter, his heart a storm. He had faced armies, torn through rival alphas, stood unshaken before death itself. But now, as Selena lay broken by the very curse meant to chain her, he knew true fear, and he vowed, silently, fiercely, that no power in this world or the next would take her from him. The night fell heavy over Dragon's palace, a silence that felt too unnatural, too forced. The guards along the walls shifted uneasily, their instincts prickling with the sense of a storm that had no wind and no clouds. Selena, standing at the balcony of her chamber, felt it too. Her chest rose and fell with each uneasy breath, her skin crawling with awareness. The air smelled different, burnt cedar and ash, as though fire already consumed the world outside. Kyle entered without knocking, his stride fierce, his aura sharp with command. The moonlight clung to him, turning the silver in his hair into strands of ice. He didn't waste words. "They're coming." Selena turned, her pulse stumbling. "Morgath?" Kale's jaw clenched. "And the Shadow Court. All of them." Even before he finished, the tremor of the earth proved him right. The ground quaked beneath their feet, deep and furious, as though the palace itself had become the heart of a beast that had awakened. The first attack hit the southern wall. Black fire erupted, staining the marble battlements with shadows that writhed and clawed like living things. Guards screamed as the flames consumed them, their cries echoing across the halls. Selena flinched but didn't retreat. Kale's hand was suddenly at her back, grounding her. His eyes, those storm-dark orbs, burned with both fury and something deeper, something he hadn't spoken but always showed. You will not fall tonight. The palace bells clanged in frantic warning. Horns blew across the courtyard. Armored wolves shifted mid-battle, their snarls and howls rising into a chorus of defiance. The shadow court answered with shrieks, creatures tearing through the breach, half shadow, half flesh, born of Morgath's curse. Selena's blood turned to fire. She followed Kale down the winding stairs, through corridors where guards rushed to their posts until they burst into the grand hall. What had once been a sanctuary of marble pillars and golden tapestries was now trembling under assault. The carved doors rattled as shadowed talons struck from the other side. "They're inside already," Selena whispered, her heart slamming against her ribs. Kale unsheathed his blade. Moonlight caught the steel, and the weapon seemed to hum with living power. He cast her a single look, half command, half plea. "Stay close to me." The doors shattered inward. Shadows flooded like water through the hall. Creatures with no eyes but endless mouths lunged forward. Selena lifted her hand without thinking. The mark on her wrist blazed like molten silver, and a wave of pure light burst from her palm, slamming the first wave of shadows against the walls. They hissed, burned, and dissolved into smoke. Every pair of eyes in the hall turned toward her. Guards, allies, even Kale. She hadn't meant to reveal it so soon, hadn't realized how strong it had grown. But there was no time for fear. The Shadow Court's voice came then, echoing from nowhere and everywhere at once. Morgath's tone dripped like venom. "Little queen, you think the moon favors you? Tonight, you will learn what it means to defy the dark." The ceiling cracked. From above, the chandelier of crystal shattered, raining shards upon the hall. Selena ducked, Kale shielding her with his arm, the silver of his armor glittering with glass. They rose together, and in that heartbeat, she knew. This battle wasn't just for the throne. It was for survival itself. The fight consumed the palace. Corridors filled with fire and smoke. Blades clashed with shrieks of shadow. Selena moved beside Kale, never more than a step behind, her light slicing through darkness like a living flame. Each strike burned brighter, as though the moon itself bled through her veins. But the deeper they fought, the more relentless the court became. Morgath himself had not yet revealed his form, but his power slithered through every shadow, every creature, every wound the palace took. Selena faltered only once, when she saw a young guard dragged into the dark by a shadow beast, his scream cut short. For an instant, fear gripped her throat. Her hands trembled, and the light flickered. Kyle seized her wrist. His voice was a growl, not to command her but to anchor her. "Look at me." Her eyes locked on his. His forehead was streaked with blood, his breaths rough, but his gaze was steel. "You are not weak. You are mine, and you are stronger than the night." Something shattered inside her. Not fear, but the last remnants of doubt. She drew in breath, her chest burning, and let go. The mark on her wrist expanded, threads of silver light racing across her skin. Her gown, torn and blood-streaked, shimmered as though woven with starlight. Her hair caught the moonlight pouring from the shattered windows, glowing with silver fire. Selena rose. Light erupted around her, a dome that spread across the hall. Shadows hissed, shrieked, and burned to ash the moment they touched it. The walls cracked under the force, but the palace stood. For the first time, Morgath's voice faltered. "You dare?" "Yes," Selena said, her voice like thunder. "I dare." She stepped forward, her hands outstretched, moonlight surging in every pulse. The creatures rushed her, but none could touch her now. Each strike of her hand tore them apart. Each flare of light left trails of burning silver across the floor. Beside her, Kale fought with renewed fury, his blade slicing through whatever dared to reach her. Together they became something greater than king and queen, fire and steel, moonlight and shadow breaker. The palace shook as Morgath's true form finally emerged, towering and cloaked in shadow. His eyes burned like black fire. Kyle lifted his blade, Selena lifted her hands, and the hall became their battlefield. The Shadow Court's rebellion had begun, but so had Selena's ascension. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving, she wasn't just resisting, she was becoming. The moon burned in her veins, and beauty no longer meant frailty, it meant power. Selena's true self shone, terrible and radiant, a beacon in the heart of war. And every enemy would learn, she was not the broken girl fate tried to discard, she was the queen of moonlight. The first clash with Morgath sent shockwaves through the palace, stones splintering, fire devouring the halls. Yet in that ruin, Selena and Kale stood unbroken, their power entwined. And as the night deepened, the war for Dragon truly began. The palace still smoldered from the Shadow Court's assault. Broken banners sagged from blackened marble columns, the air thick with the stench of smoke and blood. Selena stood in the ruins of the Grand Hall, her body trembling from exhaustion, her gown torn, her skin streaked with soot and sweat. Yet her eyes glowed with a radiance that had not been there before. Moonlight itself seemed to pulse beneath her skin. Across from her, Lady Morgath descended the shattered staircase with the grace of a queen who had lost nothing. Her dark silks rippled around her, untouched by the carnage, her jeweled crown gleaming as if mocking the crown Kale himself wore. Behind her trailed shadows that did not belong to the smoke, but to something far darker. The lingering essence of the Shadow Court, bound to her by blood pacts and unspeakable bargains. Selena's breath caught, fury and sorrow colliding in her chest. For years she had hidden beneath Morgath's cruelty, veiled, mocked, treated as less than a servant. For years she had endured the curse that stripped her of her face and dignity. And now here she stood, her curse burning in her veins, but her power no longer suppressed. "Morgath," Selena whispered, her voice raw but steady. "This ends tonight." Lady Morgath's lips curved into a smile, cruel and maternal at once. "My darling stepdaughter," she purred, her voice dripping with venomous affection. "How radiant you look. Finally, the bloom beneath the weeds. But did you truly think your newfound power makes you my equal? You are still nothing but a child playing with fire." Kyle's voice thundered from behind Selena. "She is no child. She is my mate, my queen, and she will end you." His golden eyes burned like molten metal, his claws half unsheathed, his entire body thrumming with the need to protect her. But Selena raised her hand, stopping him. "No, Kyle. This is my battle, my curse, my freedom." For a moment, Kyle hesitated. His chest rose and fell like a storm barely contained, but he stepped back, his loyalty as sharp as his rage. His trust in her was absolute. Morgath's laughter cracked through the ruins, high and chilling. "So brave, so foolish. Very well, stepdaughter. Let us see how well you dance when the curse you carry consumes you from within." She raised her staff, carved from obsidian and tipped with a gem that bled shadow. Dark tendrils erupted, spiraling across the floor, snuffing out torches and choking the air with black fog. The ground quaked as Morgath summoned her full might, magic stolen from the Shadow Court, amplified by centuries of hatred and envy. Selena's pulse thundered in her ears. The curse clawed at her, twisting her skin, threatening to drag her back into ugliness. But then Kale's bond brushed against her heart, warm, steady, unyielding. "You are not your curse. You are mine. You are moonlight." Selena straightened. She let the veil of fear fall away. Power surged through her veins. Not Morgath's borrowed darkness, but something purer, wilder, Moonlight poured from her palms, weaving into silver fire. It bathed the hall, clashing with Morgath's shadows in a storm of light and dark. The two forces collided. Shadow screamed against light, the floor cracking beneath their clash. Morgath's voice rose in a shriek, words of an old tongue meant to enslave and bind. Selena countered not with incantations but with her will, her defiance, her refusal to bow. Each blast she unleashed carried the weight of every humiliation, every lash of cruelty, every year she had lived beneath her stepmother's scorn. "You cannot win," Morgath cried, sweat beading across her brow, her face twisted with fury. "You are cursed because you are weak, because even the moon despised you." Selena's eyes blazed, silver eclipsing every trace of shadow. "No. I was cursed because you feared me." Her voice rang with unshakable truth. The moonlight surged, coiling into a blade of silver flame. With a cry that shook the hall, Selena hurled it forward. It sliced through Morgath's shadows, shattering the obsidian staff in her hands. Morgath staggered back, her crown falling from her head with a clang. Her silks burned, her body trembling as the silver fire consumed her stolen magic. But still she clung to life, eyes blazing with hatred. "You will never be free," she screamed, her voice breaking into madness. "The curse will bind you until it devours you whole. Even if I die, you will rot with it." Selena stepped closer, moonlight haloing her. Her beauty shone through the remnants of the curse, no longer something borrowed from fate, but something earned through strength. "No, Morgath, I am free because I choose to be. Your curse has no power over me anymore." With her final word, Selena raised her hands and unleashed a burst of pure silver radiance. It swallowed Morgath in one blinding wave. The stepmother's scream cut through the night, high and desperate, before it was silenced forever. When the light faded, only ash remained. The hall fell into stillness. Selena swayed, her strength nearly gone, but Kale was there instantly, his arms strong around her, his lips brushing her hair. His voice broke with awe and relief. "You did it, my love. You destroyed her." Selena leaned against him, her chest heaving. And yet, Morgath's final words lingered like poison in her mind. "You will never truly be free." The curse had shattered, yes. But deep in her veins, a faint echo of darkness still pulsed. For the first time, Selena wondered if Morgath's vengeance had left scars too deep for even moonlight to heal. The dawn that followed Morgath's death was unlike any Selena had ever seen. The sky over the palace was painted in strokes of rose and gold, clouds scattered like ashes of the night. The fires of the Shadow Court's rebellion still smoldered, but for the first time in years the city breathed freely. Wolves lifted their heads to the heavens, howling not in fear, but in relief. Selena stood at the highest balcony of the palace, Kale at her side, the wind tugging at her hair. Her veil was gone, burned in the battle never to be worn again. Her face, once twisted by Morgath's cruel curse, shone in the full splendor of her beauty. Yet it was not beauty alone that made the people below gasp when they saw her. It was the power that radiated from her, a silver glow that clung to her skin, as though the moon herself had claimed her. The courtyard below was filled with pack lords, soldiers, and citizens. They had gathered not for judgment this time, but for recognition. The Alpha King was about to crown his queen. Kyle's hand brushed Selena's, his golden eyes lingering on her with something between awe and reverence. He had fought alongside her, bled for her, nearly lost everything for her. Now, standing before their people, he looked at her, not as the cursed girl who had once hidden behind a veil, but as the mate destiny had carved for him. "Are you ready?" he asked softly, his voice carrying only to her. Selena's heart thudded. Ready. The word felt heavy, sacred. For years she had been forced into shadows, her life dictated by cruelty. Now, freedom stretched before her like a horizon. Her lips curved into a faint, steady smile. "I've been ready my whole life." The horns of the palace sounded, echoing across the city. The crowd hushed, every eye turning upward. Kale stepped forward, his cloak of black and gold sweeping behind him, his presence commanding the air itself. He raised a crown wrought of silver and obsidian, forged in the fires of his ancestors. But before placing it upon his own mate's head, he spoke. "My people," Kale began, his voice booming, steady as a war drum. "We have weathered shadow and betrayal. We have stood against enemies who would see us broken, and through it all, one truth has revealed itself. Strength alone does not rule. Cunning alone cannot endure. Only loyalty. Only love." He turned, looking at Selena with a gaze that stripped her bare. This woman, this queen, stood against the darkness that sought to consume us all. Though cursed, she did not bow. Though hunted, she did not run. She chose to fight, and in her courage, I found my salvation. A murmur swept through the courtyard. Some of the lords exchanged uneasy glances, for they remembered the monstrous face revealed at the trial. But even they could not deny the truth of Kale's words, nor the power that radiated from Selena now. Kale lifted the crown, its jewels catching the dawn. Selena Blackthornne, daughter of wolves, breaker of curses, bearer of the moon's light, do you accept the bond of crown and throne, to stand as my equal, my mate, my queen? Selena stepped forward. The weight of the moment pressed against her, but she did not falter. She met Kale's gaze, and in his golden eyes, she saw not command, but devotion. "I do," she said, her voice steady, ringing clear across the courtyard. "Not as the girl you saved, but as the woman who will stand beside you, always." Kale's lips curved into the faintest smile. He placed the crown upon her head. The courtyard erupted. Wolves howled, soldiers struck spears against stone. Voices rose in cries that shook the sky. "Queen! Queen Selena!" Selena's chest ached, tears threatening to spill. For so long, she had believed herself broken, unworthy. Now, standing unveiled before her people, she felt the truth settle deep in her bones. The curse was gone. Forever. Kale pulled her close, his arm tightening around her waist. He bent his head, his lips brushing her ear. "You are mine, and I am yours. Let the world remember this day." Selena turned into his embrace, their lips meeting. It was not just a kiss, it was a seal, a vow. Silver light flared around them as the bond between them burned brighter than ever, moonlight and sunlight entwining. But as the cheers swelled, an old man's voice carried from the crowd. Elder Oren, his eyes shadowed with knowledge, lifted a scroll weathered with time. "The prophecy," he whispered, though the words seemed to echo louder than they should. Selena froze, the kiss breaking. Kale stiffened beside her, his gaze snapping toward the elder. Oren's voice trembled as he spoke aloud, though it seemed less a declaration and more a warning carved into fate itself. "When the moon's bride wears the crown of wolves, shadows will stir once more. For though curses shatter, darkness does not die. Two souls bound in love may hold the night at bay. But beware, for the greatest battle is yet to come." A chill rippled through the crowd. Murmurs spread like wildfire, hope colliding with unease. Selena's hand found Kale's, gripping tightly. Kale's jaw tightened, but his voice remained iron. "Prophecy or no, we face it together." Selena met his gaze, her heart steady, her fear tempered into resolve. "Together," she whispered. The crown gleamed on her head, the dawn burning across the kingdom. And though the future stretched uncertain before them, one truth had become undeniable. The Alpha King and his queen were unstoppable.
The story pauses, but the fire never dies. Here in Tales by Jenny Moon, the hunt only waits for the next night. If you survived this chapter, step deeper, share your presence with the pack, so it knows who dares to return. The night never sleeps, and neither do the things within it. Rest if you must, keep the moon close, And if you feel eyes on you, or a whisper at your door, don't panic. It's only a story until the moon finds you.